Grace alone. Why works don't save you. And part 1. The weight you carry. You know that feeling when you've done something wrong, and no amount of apologizing feels like enough. You're sitting there, replaying the moment, thinking, if only you'd been better, if only you'd said the right thing, if only you'd tried harder. What if I told you that your relationship with God has been trapped in that exact same loop your entire life? And what if the way out isn't doing more? It's understanding something you've never been told. Every person in this room carries a secret scoreboard. You do. I see you adding things up. Good deeds on one side, failures on the other. And somewhere in the back of your mind, there's a calculation running. Am I good enough yet? Have I earned it? You never quite know the answer, which is exactly the problem. The truth is, you've been sold a lie dressed up as motivation. You've been told that God helps those who help themselves. You've been taught that faith without works is dead, and you translated that into works without faith will save you. You sit in church and hear about grace, but you leave feeling like grace is the down payment. The real salvation is on you. It's your job to close the gap. Your performance, your goodness, your effort. But what if you're standing in that gap and it was never supposed to be there? Here's what nobody's saying out loud. Deep down, you wonder if God's love has an expiration date. You wonder if He's keeping a record. You wonder if one day you'll finally mess up enough that He'll give up on you. Have you ever felt that? That creeping fear that says eventually you'll be too much, too broken, too weak, too compromised. And when you are, He'll be done. That fear is what I'm here to unpack, because it's not true. But before you believe me, you need to understand why you believed it in the first place. Part 2. What the law promised. The Jewish people had a system, not a modern point system with a phone app, but a real one, written on stone, taught in every home, lived out every single day. The Torah gave them 613 commandments. 613. Let me say that again, because your brain might not have landed on the weight of it. 613. Imagine waking up every morning knowing there are 613 ways to honor God and your community. Imagine getting even a third of them right and still feeling like you've failed. The scribes and Pharisees in Jesus' time were the straight-A students of this system. They knew the law, they kept the law, they taught the law, and yet Jesus looked at them and said something that must have shattered them. You're perfect on the outside, but inside you're full of dead bones. These weren't lazy men. These weren't people giving their all halfway. These were the most disciplined, most devoted, most rigorous keepers of righteousness in all of Israel. And Jesus' point wasn't that they needed to try harder. His point was that the whole system, the entire project of being saved by obedience, was fundamentally broken. Let me hold on to something for you, because I'm going to come back to this. The Pharisees believed something true, that if you do the right thing, something good will happen. That action has consequence. But they got the sequence wrong. They thought consequence brings approval. Jesus came to show that approval comes first. The scholar Josephus, writing about first-century Judaism, noted something fascinating. The most observant Jews believed that God's law was His greatest gift. They weren't trying to earn points. They were trying to show gratitude for the covenant. They were trying to maintain the relationship by keeping their side of the bargain. It was transactional, yes, but it wasn't mercenary. It was the best theology they had. But it was still insufficient, and they felt it. And part 3. When perfection isn't perfect. You have probably met someone, or maybe you've been someone, who keeps the rules obsessively. You know the type. They're not trying to impress anybody. They're actually trying to feel safe. The rules are their guarantee. If you follow rules, bad things don't happen. If you're good, people love you. If you work hard, you succeed. If you pray enough, God answers. It's cause and effect. and sometimes it works. Sometimes you do the work and you get the result. But sometimes, and these are the moments that break people, you do everything right and it falls apart anyway. You pray and your child gets sick. You're honest and you get betrayed. You work and the company closes. You save yourself for the right person and the marriage fails. That's when you realize that goodness isn't a formula. Paul understood this. Before he was Paul, he was Saul, a Pharisee's Pharisee. If anyone could have been saved by his own effort, it was him. He kept the law. He was blameless, he says, in his own righteousness. Blameless. Do you understand what that means? It means he had done the thing. He had achieved it. He had kept the 613 commandments as well as any human could. He was the success story of the law. And then he met the risen Jesus, and in a moment, everything he had earned, everything he had achieved, everything he was proud of, he called it garbage. Literally, he said his own righteousness was skubala, which in Greek means excrement. The thing he had built his entire identity on, the thing that made him worthy, the thing he thought would save him. He was willing to burn it all down. Why? Because he finally understood something. Part 4. The moment everything changed. There is a letter Paul wrote to the church in Rome, and in this letter, he's trying to explain something that sounds completely backward to the human ear. He says, God's kindness is meant to lead you to repentance. Not your effort, not your exhaustion, not your performance. God's kindness. Think about what that does to the normal order of operations. You thought it was, be good. God is kind to you. Paul says it's, God is kind to you, you want to be good. The arrow points backward. This is the moment I want you to hold on to something. Because what I'm about to tell you might sound like it's encouraging laziness. It's not. But it will sound that way at first, and you need to sit with the discomfort. Loop open. Are you ready? Here's the foundation that everything else stands on. You cannot earn what you don't need to earn. You can only earn what isn't already been given to you. Loop close. Let me explain with the story. There's a man in the Gospel of Luke. He has 2 sons. The younger one does something unthinkable. He asks for his inheritance early. In that culture, in that time, this is not like asking for an early college fund. This is saying to your father, I wish you were dead. I want your money more than I want you. He's saying it with his actions, and the father gives it to him. The younger son takes everything and leaves. He runs. He parties. He lives without rules. And eventually he runs out of money. He ends up in a pig farm, the lowest possible place for a Jewish person, eating the food meant for animals. And in that moment, he thinks, even my father's servants are eating better than I am. I'm going to go home. I'm going to throw myself on his mercy. I'm going to work off what I owe. He has a plan. He's going to earn his way back. But watch what happens. The father sees him coming from far away. The father is not waiting for an explanation. The father is not calculating what the boy owes. The father runs. And in that culture, a dignified man did not run. That was beneath him. He runs and he embraces his son and he kisses him. And the boy starts his rehearsed speech. I'm not worthy to be called your son. Let me be one of your servants. He's trying to negotiate. He's trying to earn. And the father doesn't even let him finish. He orders a celebration. He kills the fattened calf. He puts a ring on his son's finger, a sign of authority and favor. The son showed up assuming he had to earn his way back to servant status. The father was already planning a party. This is what Paul understood. Salvation is not a contract, it's a reunion. Part 5. Grace is not a down payment. Here's where it gets uncomfortable, and I need you to sit with the discomfort because your entire system of self-worth might be built on the opposite of what I'm about to say. Grace is not God saying, "I'll forgive you if you stop doing bad things." Grace is God saying, "I have forgiven you, full stop." The condition is already met. You're already in. And now, because you're already in, you're going to want to live differently. The Greek word is charis, sometimes translated as grace, sometimes as favor, sometimes as gift. It's something you receive, not something you achieve. And Paul makes it explicitly clear, by grace you have been saved through faith, not by grace and works, not by grace and your effort. By grace. Salvation is his work, not your work. But here's where everyone gets confused. He also says that faith without works is dead. And you read that and you think, oh, so I still have to work. So it is about what I do. So grace is the beginning, but my effort is the ending. And that's why you're exhausted. Works are not the engine of your salvation. Works are the evidence of it. They're the fruit, not the root. You don't produce an apple tree by making apples. The tree makes apples. You produce an apple tree by planting an apple seed and giving it water and sunlight and soil. The fruit is what grows out of the nature of the thing. And here's the shocking part. Works can destroy your faith. Not because works are bad, works are beautiful, but when you do your works looking for approval, looking for proof that you're saved, looking for assurance that you're enough, that's when they become a poison. That's when they become a substitute for faith instead of an expression of it. A man named Augustine struggled with this exact thing. He was brilliant. He was disciplined. He read everything, understood everything, kept everything, and he was miserable because he was doing all of it in the wrong direction. He was working toward God. And it wasn't until someone told him something radical, that God was working toward him, that his entire soul shifted. The relief he felt was so complete that he wept. He finally understood. He had been trying to earn something that was already his. Part 6. The Work That Works. Now here's where this gets practical. Because what I'm telling you is not permission to stop trying. It's permission to stop trying to prove yourself. Those are different things. When you're no longer trying to earn salvation, something strange happens. You start to actually serve. Not grudgingly, not to stay on the good side of a cosmic scoreboard, but because you want to, because you feel loved, and people who feel loved give love. There's a woman in John's Gospel. We don't know her name, only that she was a sinner, and she hears that Jesus is eating dinner at a Pharisee's house. So she does something shocking. She goes in uninvited. She's weeping. She's pouring perfume on his feet. She's wiping his feet with her hair. And the Pharisee thinks, if he were a real prophet, he would know what kind of woman this is. But Jesus says to the Pharisee, this righteous man, this keeper of the law, he says, you didn't even wash my feet. You didn't greet me with a kiss, but she has not stopped kissing my feet. You gave me nothing. She has poured out everything. Why? Why was her response so lavish? Because she had been forgiven much. Not because she had paid back much. Not because she was working off a debt. But because she had experienced grace, and grace produces gratitude, and gratitude produces generosity. That's the actual cycle. Not fear, not obligation, but love. This is the work that works, the work that grows out of being saved, not the work that earns being saved. Now, I need to tell you something that will either set you free or terrify you. I hope it sets you free. There is no amount of sin that can reverse your salvation. I'll say that again. There is no sin in your future, no future failure, no future breakdown, no future betrayal of your own conscience. There is no sin in your future that can undo what Christ has already done. If salvation could be lost, then salvation isn't really salvation. It's a probation period. It's a test you have to keep passing. And that's not good news. That's just a longer version of the same exhausting system. Hatter Part 7. Why you still feel guilty. But then, why do you feel guilty? Why does the shame still come? If you're forgiven, if you're saved, if it's done, why does your conscience still accuse you? Because your conscience isn't God. Paul says there's a difference between the Holy Spirit's conviction and condemnation. Conviction is when the Spirit shows you something broken that He wants to restore in you. It's not about your worth, it's about your healing. Condemnation is the voice that says you're fundamentally unworthy, that you're bad, that you should give up. One comes from love, one comes from shame, and you've probably been listening to the wrong voice. Here's how you tell the difference. Conviction produces change because you want to. Condemnation produces change because you're trying to prove yourself. Conviction makes you think, I want to be different. Condemnation makes you think, I have to be different or I'm lost. You can spend your entire life being changed by condemnation. You can perform and never feel clean. You can check every box and still feel like you're failing. You can keep the rules and lose your soul in the process. But if you let conviction do its work, if you let God's love actually reach you, then change becomes joy instead of burden. Part 8. The only requirement. Let me be very clear about something. Grace is free, but it's not neutral. Accepting grace means accepting the person who gives grace. It means accepting Jesus. It means acknowledging that you can't and He can. That your effort isn't enough and His is. That you are loved not because you earned it and not despite the fact that you didn't, but simply because He decided you were worth loving. The theologians call this faith. Just faith, not faith plus works, not faith as a down payment. Just, I trust Him, that's it. And the moment you actually trust Him, the moment you stop trying to prove your way into His kingdom, and you just accept His invitation, everything changes. Not because you're suddenly perfect, but because you're suddenly free. The Psalms say it like this: rest in the Lord and wait patiently for Him. Not hustle and prove and perform, and maybe He'll notice. Rest, wait, trust. I know that sounds impossible. I know it sounds too easy. Your whole life has been built on the principle that good things come to those who work for them. And in that world, free feels like a trick. Free feels like there must be a catch. Free feels like you're forgetting something. But what if free is exactly what it says it is? Part 9. The reversal. Let me tell you what happens to a person when they finally get this. Not intellectually. Plenty of people understand it intellectually. But in their spirit, when they finally, actually, deeply believe it, they become dangerous. Not dangerous like harmful. Dangerous like alive. Dangerous like free. They stop performing for God and start living for God. They stop trying to manage the relationship and start resting in the relationship. They stop asking if they're doing enough, and they start asking if they're becoming more like Him. They serve, actually serve, without keeping score. They give without calculating the return. They love without checking if it's being returned. Not because they're suddenly perfect or suddenly holy, but because they're no longer afraid. The fear is gone. The fear that someday you'll finally mess up enough that God will give up on you. That fear was your real prison, not sin. Fear, and the only way out of fear is to believe that you're safe, that you're not running on probation, that you're not one mistake away from being abandoned. You're not. You never were. This is the thing that the law could never give you. The law can tell you what to do. The law cannot tell you that you're safe. The law can tell you the rules. The law cannot give you peace. But grace can, and does. Part 10, the last word. Do you remember what Peter said when he finally understood this? He had been with Jesus for 3 years. He had seen everything, but somewhere in those 3 years he had absorbed the message that salvation was transactional. So he asked Jesus, "How many times do I have to forgive someone? 7 times?" And Jesus said 70 times 7, which means infinite, forgiveness without keeping score. Not because the person deserves it, but because that's what love does. That's what grace does. Peter was thinking in terms of debt. Jesus was thinking in terms of relationship. And here's where your life turns. When you stop thinking in terms of debt too, you stop tallying your sin. You stop trying to balance your failures with your good deeds. You stop keeping a mental note of how many people you've forgiven and how many you're still working on forgiving. You stop. You rest. You trust. Not in yourself, in Him. This is not a call to passivity. This is a call to freedom. Because the only person who can actually live freely is the person who has stopped trying to earn the right to live. You are standing in that gap, the one between your brokenness and God's holiness, and the gap is already bridged. Christ is the bridge. You don't have to build it. He already did. So you can stop building. You can stop striving. You can stop performing. You can stop trying to be good enough, because enough stopped being about you the moment you were born. It became about Him, and He was already enough. He still is. He always will be. The works will come, the change will come, the fruit will come. But not because you're trying to earn them, because you finally believe that you're loved, because you finally believe that you've been chosen, because you finally actually deeply understand that you have always been worthy, not because of what you've done, but because of whose you are.